Okay, good afternoon. We're back with this Nakamichi tape deck that we saw a few days ago. And today we have a belt kit. The belt kit is 2 belts and a wheel. So, okay. That means this has an idler wheel to run the take-up reels for fast forward and rewind. So we'll get into this, and this is going to be my first time working on this particular deck, so I apologize if I can't immediately say, oh, you just take out these 3 screws and everything comes apart, because I don't have that answer yet. I will once I'm done today, but at this point we're just going to take the main screws out and get the lid off. And the goal here is going to be to get the tape mechanism out of the cabinet enough that we can work on it and get to the belts and the idler wheel. I have a pretty distinct feeling on how that's going to go. That's not a mark of doom or anything bad here, so we'll get the lid off. This front panel is more than likely going to come off, and then when this panel is off, then this mech here should kind of be able to come out, or at least we should be able to access the face of it. But we need to get behind this black plastic to get to the idler wheel. So I will begin disassembly, and then we'll turn the camera back on when we have some positive results. Okay, let's talk briefly about what we've had done so far, just so we don't get lost. 4 screws across the bottom front. Screws basically take the bottom plate off. And then on the top there are 4 screws across here. And then there are plastic spring clips, 3 here and 2 on the bottom, that you'll need to press in, and then the front panel should release, and you'll get the initial face off of the deck, and this will unhook from there. So that's our faceplate off. We're getting closer. We're looking to be able to remove this mechanism chunk here so we can get inside. We need to get into this area in here to get at the belts. Now there is one belt back here that looks like it might have excess, but you're not getting that without unscrewing a motor or the back plate here. So we need to just get this mechanism as a unit out of here. So I'm assuming this screw is going to have to go, and these 2 on the bottom, and I think the mechanism will release. We'll find out momentarily. Okay, so that assessment was correct, and now we're able to slide the main cassette mechanism back and possibly lift it. I'm trying to obviously not stress wires. I want to make sure that no wires are caught. Oh, duh. That belt that goes to the counter will need to be removed before, or at least unhooked. And then we should be able to slip this mech out of here. And I'm getting some tension, so I'm going to look and see what we're pressing against. That, you know, I don't want to actually damage anything. With this bundle of wires being tight, it may be, you know, but this will come out. It will come out. It will wiggle out of here. I just need a little bit of time to. Okay, so the one thing that is really holding this firmly in place is this ground wire that is attached here on the side. This is preventing me from turning the mechanism over, so we're going to unscrew that, because that is just on a solder terminal. And once that's free, let's set that screw off by itself. I try to keep my screws relatively organized so I don't mix up this for that. And then we can continue to try to weasel this mechanism around. There we go. Now it's starting to come out. We're closer. We're closer, we're closer. Now, this main drive belt, we will have to take this plate off so I can get a belt over that up to the playhead. So we'll have to get this back plate off. And to get to the idler wheel, we'll have to get this black face. Have to get in behind that. So stand by while I count screws. Okay, so 2 small black screws, and then there are 2 small black screws that are there, and then we're under here. This is where you access, this belt is the one that goes up to the counter, and then this is the idler wheel. This is the wheel that, you know, for the motor, so it can come over here and make this motor up here makes it fast forward and rewind and take up. And I think this is actually the one that was slipping. Now that wheel looks a little, I don't know if it looks thin or it looks like it's thick and it sits deep. It sits deep in there, but let's hope it's very, very stretchy. Let's put it that way. So I can see why they use like little hooks and picks and things to get into these. That's the replacement tire, and that's definitely a thicker diameter by a decent amount than the one that's on there. So why would it be slipping and sliding on fast forward and rewind? This wheel right here is fatigued, so that tells us it should just be a matter of stretching the previous one off and stretching a replacement on. Probably be using things like little tiny screwdrivers or something like that to do it. I don't know that I'm going to, I haven't decided what methodology I'm going to use, whether I'm going to use like a small needle nose plier or whatever, but effectively whatever works for you to take that rubber roller off and replace it with the one in your kit. Okay, so after a few tries with a sort of funky angled needle nose plier, we were able to get the idler wheel off. I bit it up a little bit, but we're replacing it anyway. So we'll compare that to the original part, and I can see that probably a millimeter or so of that is worn, and this rubber has gotten hardened. It does not appear that there was any adhesive in there, so it should just be a friction fit, and I'm going to try to put the replacement on using minimal tools as to not mar it. We'll try to do this with our fingers. Okay, so that didn't go too bad. The new tire is on there. I stretched it on most of the way with my finger, and I guided it a little bit with a precision needle nose there. I didn't actually pinch it because I didn't want to mar the surface or anything. The belt for the timer should just be able to be unhooked from over there. This is for the, watch out for that little micro switch. You don't want to bend the tar out of that. Let's see the size difference from old to new, if there is much of one. So that'll give us an idea of how much these belts have fatigued. And then this belt will be attached over here once the mechanism is put back in place. So yeah, we can see the substantial difference here. This other belt has definitely got some more miles on it. So there's our old belt. Let's verify that I'm not nuts. Yeah. Definitely this belt is still plenty loose when I've got the other one snug. So fatigued belts are us. That's how we save tape decks and turntables and other such things. I should use Tecmo's UK English and say the belts have perished. I actually like that terminology. It's a good way of putting it. Okay, so we got that around there. We're going to get it free from hooking into any other mech. There we go. That belt's on. And we'll connect it up here once we get in there. So I should be able to put, and I'll put the front plate back on here because I still have to get into the back for the play belt. So we will reattach this. That goes there. And then with these two screws, and this is probably boring watching somebody turn a screw ever so carefully as to not strip or damage it. And I don't want to be one of those, 2-minute how-to videos where you say, okay, this is my broken thing, and here's how to fix it. Step 1, take it apart. Step 2, fix it. Step 3, put it back together. It doesn't, I try to be thorough. I want you guys to be able to see what I see, but there are times where I can't be that generous because I'm not sure and I have to figure things out and kind of make up the rules as I go along. So effectively, to get this belt off, we will need to remove this plate, because this plate is on the back of that flywheel. And so I see 3 screws there. We'll take those off and see if that flywheel comes free. Okay, one of the screws is hidden under the wires, but we have 1, 2, and 3. There are 3 screws here. That allows the plate that this motor is attached to kind of bobble free. I should be able to unhook the belt, and there's enough of an air gap that I can slide that belt out from underneath or off of that flywheel. So that flywheel is not actually connected on the back here. I was concerned it was, but it's not. But it's sort of guarded, if you will, by that. So if I can slip that belt off the flywheel, it should come out. And there it is. So let's compare the original belt to our replacement belt. Okay, so I have the original belt snug on my fingers, and I still have, that's not as bad, but that's enough. That's enough. Yeah, we should definitely be doing this. This is going to help this player out immensely. So effectively, I'm going to get this over the flywheel, and then hopefully on the motor, and then reattach that plate. So snaking this around the flywheel is probably going to be boring and uneventful. So we'll do that. Okay, so I've been able to get the belt over the flywheel and on the motor. So now I want to put these screws back, and then I want to essentially just rotate the motor and flywheel just a little bit to make sure the belt's not going to slip off. And as long as it doesn't slip off, we're good. The biggest frustration doing this with these type of things is I'm replacing belts that are fatigued, and I need to get new belts on there that are not fatigued. But in order to get the new belts on that are not fatigued, I need to stretch them somewhat to get them to go on the thing that I need to get them to go on. So it's kind of an adventure to not fatigue your new belts before you're even able to use them and get any enjoyment out of them. So yeah, welcome to my world. But so far okay. We haven't had any catastrophes. And then when we put this back together, and I put a tape in it, and I go to play it and fast forward and rewind it, it should be working as good as it did when it was much younger, which this unit is fine other than fatigued belts, which is very common. I've been able to buy some other, decks. I have a Marantz deck. It's probably 80s era, and I was able to buy it for I think $6. And the reason why is it was sold as a non-working unit. And why was it non-working? Because it needed a belt kit. So being able to just figure out things, simple assembly, disassembly, how does this go together, how does this come apart. That type of skill can aid you in building a very, very nice vintage audio system without having to break the bank. The story I was given about this was when the owner of this was originally inquired about the issue or issues that it had, which we really didn't get to experience in great depth because it behaved really well for me. Okay, I gotta make sure these wires are not getting hooked. Sorry, I'm putting my big head in the way here. As in sliding this back, this one wire is kind of catching on my base here, and I need to make sure that it's not. So, there we go, get that out of the way. When assembling these, just try to be very, very patient and very gentle, and if something doesn't fit back into position, you know, just don't go gorilla on it. You're working with precision here. This is not a hammer job per se. So yeah, this should slide forward, and then it'll slide forward, and I'll hook my counter belt back on, and we'll finish putting all the rest of the pieces together. See you in a few minutes. Okay, so things are going well. Our mechanism is back in here. We're going to spin that belt a little bit. There we go. You see how it's centered up there on the it's centered up on the flywheel. Okay, so give that a little spin. That's good. Okay, so now we're just putting everything back together, and all the screws and everything should line up, and they don't really require any kind of crazy force. You know, these with electronics, they're a little bit different than working on heavy equipment. You know, I know at one time or another everything lined up and all the screw holes lined up and the screws went into the holes without any major fuss, because I kind of took this apart earlier and I saw the evidence of that. So when putting these back together, just be patient. I neglected to tell you the story. The story was, according to the owner of this, that he had taken it to a shop and inquired about the issues that it had with the slipping, which I think were probably related to needing an idler wheel and the belt kit. And he was told that on a unit like this, it's probably not worth much, but I can give you $25 for it. So that is cruel and not very nice to do to anybody, because this deck is a nice deck and it should be worth more than $25, at least in good health. So, you know, obviously the belt kit costs, that's actually kind of an expensive belt kit. That was purchased from Vintage Electronics in Colorado. You can look up their website. He has a lot of nice parts for different things that may or may not need to be fixed over time. So if you need parts for your turntable or tape deck or something, that's a good source to check out. The prices at Vintage Electronics were better by quite a bit than I saw on eBay and Amazon. Most of the eBay and Amazon sellers were probably around $35-ish for the kit, $35 or so, or $35 to $40, depending on vendor. Where Vintage Electronics was, he was like $21, $22, then you have to pay the freight, which is $5. So by the time we're done, we're just shy of $30. Which it's not free. I wish everything were free, but we can't have everything free. And we gotta make sure everything lines up. We put this together, and there, I feel a speed bump, but the speed bump's supposed to be there. Now, yeah, we're fine. Okay. These two screws, I don't remember. I think those are the type of screws that are made to go into the plastic that hold the face on. So until I'm completely certain, we're going to not put those down. Wait a minute. Okay, this is an assembly thing. Remember how we need to remember to do things in the order that you did them. You want to reverse the order you did them. I took the faceplate off after I took the bottom plate off, so I'm going to get myself into a backwards frenzy because I'm telling stories. So stop telling stories and put it back together in the order that you took it apart. So at this point, let's check all of our wires here. Well, I see there's a floater in here. There's something floating around in this chassis. What is that? Oh, it's a little piece of... What is that? Looks like a little bit of a piece of shrink wrap or something. I will bet that was probably from my bench earlier. So that's my fault. I don't think there's anything missing out of this unit. Okay, so we need to put the faceplate on first. So we'll line it up, and if I remember, this had the plastic snaps, so this should snap on the top. There's the 3 on the top, and the 2 snaps on the bottom. Let's see. Up, and we're having a little bit of an alignment over the door. There we go. Now that lined up pretty frustration-free. That's good. Now, that explains a lot. Why did this bottom deck have speed bumps in the middle? Well, it's because this goes over the metal. That way it's going to sit flat. See? These are why we have an order of doing things. So, even I mess up sometimes, but it's very, very rare. I almost never ever mess up. And I've never had any projects that I started doing and then just deleted the videos because the project didn't end up as planned. That's never ever happened here, ever. Yeah, right. I should run for Congress. Well, at this point, beyond putting screws in things, I don't think this is going to get too exciting, so let's just fast forward to the testing phase. I think we're good. And yeah, got everything back together. All the pieces are there. Now, one thing I see that I want to make sure doesn't happen, my belt on this motor is slipping a little bit off the front of the motor, so I want to make sure I get that all the way over the little ridge to hold it in place first. Because if that pops off after we get going, I'm going to be very, very sad. And it's the reason it wants to pop off is because it's not far enough back on the flywheel. So this is something I can fix before it becomes a real problem. So we'll just give it a little bit of, whoa, cannot let it come off here. The minute I hit play, this thing would have popped off on me. Shot forward and laughed at me. So we'll roll it gently here. Try to work it farther back on the flywheel to the point where it will ride nicer. Right here. So we're just working it gently. I think we got it. Now I can spin the motor all the way around, and the belt is on the flywheel. Roughly, you can see on the flywheel the mark left by the old belt. So this has made it back to where the old belt rode. So that's good. Our counter belt seems to be okay. Feels snug. So I think we're okay. I think we're ready to test. So let's go get some electricity. Okay, so I just turned it on and there's no explosions. So we'll put in our tape here and let's try rewind. That sounds good. The wheels are flying. Stop. Fast forward. That looks good too. Stop. And somebody loves me. Now we hit play, and boy, I hope that thing rides on there correctly. And there she goes. How's our counter belt doing? Is our counter wheel running? Let's make sure our counter is running up the way it's supposed to. Oh yeah. Counter's running. I see audio on the screen. Yeah, so that's I think we're fixed, man. That looks like we're in good shape. Cool. Prior to firing this up, I did another visual inspection, just particularly in this area, just to make sure that nothing got goofed that I was working on, you know, just to make sure that nothing got bent over or broken. I was trying to be very, very careful about that during the whole process. So we'll give this thing one more listen on the headphones so we don't deal with any copyright strikes, and do a little more. There's a little more fast forward and a little more rewind. Let's let this tape rewind all the way and see if it stops. Yep, our little counter belts are flying. Okay, it stopped. And then we'll hit play. And the wheels are going. And audio's jumping. I think we're good. So if there's any further breaks on this and I find that something isn't actually 100%, then we'll deal with it, but otherwise we'll consider this fixed. That's a belt kit on a Nakamichi BX-100. It's a play belt, a counter belt, and an idler wheel to run the fast forward and rewind and the little take-up reels. So 3 belts, and yeah, they're kind of expensive, but it's a lot cheaper than throwing it in the trash, because these are a very high grade cassette deck, and if you could find one of these at your local flea market and the electronicals seem to work but the playback and rewind and stuff is poop, there's a good chance that the belts have perished, and you can change them and make it better. So that's what we try to do as repair technicians. We try to make things better. Alright, thanks for watching. Have a great day.